Welcome back, adventurers, and thank you for joining us for our second installment of Dungeons and Dragons and Denise. As promised last week, today we'll be talking about some tips and tricks that can help both new and seasoned dungeon masters. Dungeon masters are responsible for crafting a story and world for their players to play in, planning sessions week by week, and creating their own cast of characters for players to interact with. But overall, one of the greatest responsibilities a dungeon master has is to ensure that their table is a safe and comfortable environment for everyone present. So now we're going to talk about some things that you, as a dungeon master, can do before, during, and after sessions to achieve this. Firstly, before starting any new campaign or even before playing a one-shot, something you can do to make sure you will be avoiding potentially triggering topics at the table is by asking each of your players for a consent sheet ahead of time. Now, when I say consent sheet, I don't mean some contract your players will sign that reads, "I consent to playing D&D." Typically, RPG consent sheets feature a checklist of potentially triggering topics that players can mark as green, yellow, or red. Green meaning go, yellow typically indicating that they would like a heads up ahead of time before something could come up, and a red is a hard no. While this prep work does save you from a lot of potential trouble down the road, it is always still possible that a player may become uncomfortable with something at the table during a session. That's where something called the X card system comes into play. The X card system works very simply. If a player is uncomfortable with something happening or being said at the table, they can put up their arms in an X or give some kind of digital signal if you're playing online, and then whatever is happening will be stopped, no questions asked. You, as the DM, will either move on with the scene, dropping whatever topic was being discussed or joked about beforehand, or cut to the next scene entirely.
Now, I first heard about the X card at Gen Con in a panel, and I've seen it used a couple of times in every game that I've sat down at and the GM has used the X card. I've instantly felt much more comfortable in that game. And I don't think I've actually seen it used in game, just the games we were playing it never came up. But the fact that it's there, it's this nice safety net. And there's some critique that, having the X card means that, okay, you're taking anything bad that could potentially happen to the characters out of game, or you're stifling the GM's creativity. It doesn't limit creativity because the X card is there as a safety net, so you can actually take a few more risks than you might normally, knowing that if something does cross somebody's line, the X card is there to indicate that, and you can just back up and edit it out.
Finally, when you're running a D&D campaign, it can also be beneficial to check in with your players post-session as well. A phenomenon within the RPG community is something called character bleed. Character bleed typically happens when a player relates so strongly to the struggles of the character that they are playing that it begins to impact their mental and emotional state in their day-to-day life, outside of session. To prevent this, you, as the DM, could encourage your players to do some sort of post-session reflection, even something as simple as sharing a favorite moment from that day's session, just to ground everyone back into reality. Additionally, just checking in on your players outside of session can help immensely. In Dimension 20's campaign, A Crown of Candy, they delve into a lot of heavier topics and higher stakes, so it was a much more emotionally demanding season than the players were used to. In one of their talkback episodes, they all share something that made them happy that week to help process and remind everyone, both at the table and watching, that things in real life were still okay.
Please tell me something happy you did this week. I am less than okay after watching episode 6, and I need to know you are all still enjoying happy and wholesome things in your actual lives. Thanks, a friend you haven't met yet, and I'm sorry that you are less than okay after watching that episode. It was an intense one for sure. What are the happy things we're all doing?
Ooh, I found this little stuffed animal that really sums me up in quarantine.
Oh my goodness. That's absolutely
It's
what
me.
vibes.
It's
you
like
would.
maybe high, maybe sad, but
And those are just a few of many strategies that you can use before, during, and after your next D&D session to ensure that everyone at your table feels safe and comfortable. I know none of it is as exciting or flashy as world building or story crafting, but it is important work nonetheless. And besides, who said we can't still talk about world building and story crafting? Tune in next week to see!